Fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another episode of the Steelers Preview, and we are previewing the Pittsburgh Steelers Week 2 game, Heinz Field, the whatever. It's a home opener. I'm not going to try to be official with it. The Seahawks travel across the country for a 1 o'clock kickoff, Eastern Standard Time, and we have a lot to talk about. First, I bring in Bryan Anthony Davis. Bryan, how's it going this evening?
Really good, Jeff. I have one thing to say. I am not ready for prime time either.
Well, not many of us are. Dave, how about you?
Oh, I've never been ready for prime time.
All right, so let's talk about this upcoming game, because it's and I said this on the Standard as a Standard Wednesday night last night, and if you haven't checked that out, go back, take a listen. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on last week. We had the post-game show, myself and Lance, and Bryan and Tony did a great job with the hangover. And then the Stat Geek still touched on it. All this stuff has taken place. I feel like let's just leave last week. Let's focus on what we're supposed to do on this show, and that's preview the upcoming matchup. And so before we get into anything in specific, Dave, I wanted to start with something that really wasn't that important last week, but is important this week, and that's injuries. I want to know, what's the latest injury report? Now, we don't have the final injury report. That'll be Friday. This is recorded on Thursday. So, Dave, why don't you give us a quick rundown of the Steelers injury list, and then if there's any notable names from the Seahawks that are banged up as well.
All right. Oh, so you want the Steelers injury list, because I know last week you were more worried about me and my injury, if I was going to be able to come through or not.
Hold on. I do want to talk about the kick. We will talk about the kick around the world. We haven't been on since. I do have a Bryan and I both have to admit something, but we'll do that later. Dave, go ahead with the injury report.
I just can't believe how long it's been since this show. Just think of everything that's happened since the last preview. My goodness, it seems like I was just talking to you guys, but man, there's just been all kinds of crazy Steeler stuff. But let's talk injuries. Yesterday was rough when you looked and you saw 10 players on the injury report. Now, one of which was Ben Roethlisberger not practicing on Wednesday as usual.
Oh boy, I'm not
going to get started.
Hold on, Dave. Now's your chance. You wrote this article for the site today. If you want to have your get off my lawn moment about the players getting a day off, now's your chance.
Okay, well, I was going to say people could just check out the article if they wanted to. It's there on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. My thing is, I understand Veterans Days off. Giving the vets a day off every once in a while. I know Ben basically gets every Wednesday off, so he only practices on Thursday and Friday, and that's it. Saturday's just a walkthrough. When the coach comes out and twice in his post-game press conference says we weren't ready for prime time, he's saying we're not ready. And if you're not ready, part of the reason you're not ready is because all these players, you're not having them practice so much. I understand, especially as the season goes on. Yeah, give these guys days off, really help them to get recovered, give them that extra time before they have to come back and play again. Especially if you're giving them off Wednesday, so then that way, you play on a Sunday, you don't have to really come out and practice till Thursday. But this is week 2 after you just lost by 30 points because you weren't ready to handle the New England Patriots. I mean, if there's ever a time to say that you need to be out there, it's now. You know who didn't take the day off yesterday? Tom Brady. And that's after they won by 30 points, and they're already favored by 19 going into this week against what should be a completely inferior opponent, which is kind of a game that they have a tendency to sometimes struggle with in Miami. But still, he's not taking time off because he knows the need to prepare. That's just all I wanted to bring up. Is this the time that we really need to give guys time off? So there's my rant. There's my get off my lawn. If you really want to, go in, check out that article. Some really great discussion in the comments. Throw some stuff in there. Let's get back to the injuries. So
hold on, Bryan. Do you have anything to say about his little old man shakes fist at cloud?
You saw my little wink and a smile there. Yeah, you know what, Dave? I get it, But there's two things you can count on when the Steelers lose. It's Ben Roethlisberger saying, the quarterback's got to play better, and I'm the quarterback, blah, blah, blah. We hear that all the time. And Mike Tomlin saying something, we weren't ready for these guys. We weren't prepared. And so that's just kind of their go-to answer to pull out, because they're never giving you anything really good here, and they're going to give that out to you. Look, we've seen these days off work before. I remember when Troy Polamalu was listed because of just not age, but because of old bones or something a couple years ago, and it was kind of funny. But and when they're winning, it's fine. But right now, it's just the fact they were embarrassed because they just were not up to snuff. That is their kryptonite, that team, and we're going to talk about this more in the preview, but I don't really think that comes into play, but I get what you're saying.
My question only is this, Dave. If the Steelers would have played better than what they did, not saying that they win the game, but they played better, would you still have the same gripe?
Would I still have the same gripe?
Yeah.
Not to this degree. My gripe is this. It is such a delicate balance. I'm not saying
you said it was because it was week 2. You said it's because it was week 2. Is it because of the performance last week, or is it because it was week 2, or is it's symbiotic both, and it's one and the same?
Yes, it's the two together. If they'd have come out and they would have had a 30-point victory, and then I would have worried, hey, are you taking things too lightly? Are we taking this for granted?
My gosh, they can't do anything right.
No, but I mean, it's not even just this week. It's all. I mean, he took every third day off through training camp in the preseason, which is just what they do. Every time a starter misses practice, it throws everything off. It's just how it is. So I know some people don't like it. I'm not saying that he has to practice every practice. I'm really not. And it's not that he's not out there. It's not that he's not in the film room. It's not that he's not on the field going over this stuff. But some of the biggest complaints were you don't have the chemistry with your receivers yet. I'm not saying he needed to play more in the preseason. He threw 2 more passes than what Tom Brady did in the preseason. Some people try to say 1, but they forget Ben threw a pass on a 2-point conversion that doesn't count in the stat line. So I'm not even saying that that's the case, but it's just we just take it for granted. Oh, Ben's not practicing on Wednesday. Ben's not practicing on Wednesday. Maybe there's going to be a time where they need the extra work. And who's to say he didn't get the extra work in on the side with the receivers, even though he wasn't out there in pads doing other things. So it's really hard to judge. It just can be frustrating that it's just taken for granted that it doesn't matter that we weren't prepared. We're not going to do anything different in our preparation.
Well, to me, if you ask me, it comes down to, like, for instance, when you talk about a quarterback, and these are the 2 names you brought up, Brady and Ben. When it comes to the throwing mechanics, and as someone that played baseball his whole life, was a catcher, had to take care of his arm a lot, everyone throws a ball differently. And Ben has had, you could see as his career progresses, his throwing motion is not, say, as natural as Brady's. And changing your throwing motion is not something you want to have to do at the professional level. I think that it's more for his arm than anything else. They just want to save his arm, so his arm is still fresh for games and later in the season, because he's talked about that before. He's talked about how he doesn't throw in the offseason that much. I think Brady's just more of a natural thrower and can handle that workload. And it's not like any team is doing a lot of work on Wednesdays anyways. But I think that's what has more to do with it than, say, his knees or anything like that. There's some people in the live chat that are suggesting, it's only week 2. Like, what the heck? Like, how is he's had all preseason off? And they throw a lot of footballs in training camp. And so you want to make sure that his arm is strong. You want to make sure it's durable and can withstand all the rigors of a 16-game season. So that's my guess. Okay.
It's a balance. I got to get back to these injuries. Okay.
Get back to the injuries.
Because two players did not practice yesterday or today, and that is Joe Hayden. Well, technically it's 3. Roosevelt Nix, we know he's not going to be playing this week and maybe for a couple weeks. Coach Tomlin brought that up on Tuesday at his press conference. He's got a knee injury that could keep him out, I guess several weeks is the best way to say it. But Joe Hayden and Marquise Pouncey, neither one of them have practiced this week. Everyone that was limited on Wednesday came back as full participants on Thursday. James Conner and Zach Banner were limited due to illness. So that was something that you'd hope that they could come back from, which they did. TJ Watt was back out there full go. So was Juju Smith-Schuster. Sean Davis was limited on Wednesday and full on Thursday. That's a big positive. And Terrell Edmonds was another one who was limited yesterday but was full. So
He
all
had a
that looks
glute.
good.
He
Yes,
had a glute.
I saw that there was a glute. My question was that from the game, or did he actually maybe do
I
something in
honestly
practice?
don't. I
don't think
know.
people want to
I
ask
don't
him
want to
about his
know
glute is what
why
it is.
he's on the injury report. The
So,
glute.
But the most notable player for the Seahawks is Tyler Lockett, who is arguably their best receiver. He did not practice yesterday. He was limited today, so he is progressing in the right direction. But we'll see if that's good enough to get on the field on Sunday.
Okay, so guys, let's talk about the two players that were held out of practice on Thursday. That's Marquise Pouncey, that's Joe Hayden. Bryan, I want to ask you first, which of those two, let's assume, and I don't think this is a safe assumption by any stretch of the imagination, but let's say both of those players are not going to play this Sunday at Heinz Field. Which one concerns you more?
Marquise Pouncey, he is the anchor of that line. I mean, I am comfortable with BJ Finney coming in, but Pouncey is the guy that makes things happen. He is Ben's main protector as far as I'm concerned. I would much rather have him coming out there. Now, I'm going to get slain for this, but look, I'm fine at this point with Artie Burns coming in if he has to come in as a third guy. I think Pouncey there's just more of an upside with Pouncey there.
What about you, Dave? What do you think?
I agree with Bryan. I think, nothing against BJ Finney. I say that I think Finney plays better at guard than he does at center, even though he was a center in college. He did a fantastic job filling in for David DeCastro a couple games last year when he was out with the hand injury. But when he comes in at center, it's not quite the same. Now, I know a lot of people gave him a hard time over the snap or the lack thereof and the meme that came from it. But wasn't that his first play in there? I'm pretty sure. And I mean, he turned around and said, like, didn't you say two? You saw him hold up his fingers. So that's going to happen sometime. That's not that, that's no different than the tackle rocketing back. So, but I think the biggest thing that I feel that Finney might not be as good at center as he is guard is he's having to go in for Pouncey. So he's the guy that makes all the calls, all the blocking assignments on the line. People don't realize that it's the center calling out anything that's going on with the blocking. So that's kind of like losing your guy with the green dot on defense, which I guess the Steelers are going to vary that week to week anyway. But it's the guy that's making your blocking calls is going to be out. So, but the Steelers are pretty deep at the offensive line. So
that's true. Very versatile group. And if Finney does get the start, then Bryan's awesome BJ Finney pants will only gain in the lore of BTSC Steelers Radio YouTube magic. We'll put it that way.
You know what? I might have to wear them for the game this week because I think they would give luck. I've never actually worn them for an actual game. So maybe it's going to be the pants.
I've never been so thankful that Dave missed a field goal in my life. Because I would have to be.
Because you have to watch the game.
I have to watch the game with you guys. All right, so let's get things started with the upcoming preview. I want to know real quick because to me, I don't know a lot about the Seahawks. I just really don't. We interviewed Brandon Schultz last night from Field Goals. He's their podcasting producer, and he did a tremendous job. And he's talking about guys. And I said to Lance after the show, I didn't know any of these names he's talking about because it's not only the NFC, it's the NFC West. I mean, it's the furthest away from the East Coast as possible. So for me, it was one of those situations where, I mean, I know Tyler Lockett, and I know Russell Wilson and some of the players remaining on that defense, but guys, the Steelers, what did the Steelers need to do on Sunday outside of the generic score more points answer? What do they need to do special on Sunday that they didn't do last week to make sure that they don't fall to 0-2, that they get to 1-1 and get right? Dave, we'll start with you.
Thank you. It's very simple. Something that I expected them to do this past week that I thought wasn't even going to be a factor, and that's why I thought they could very well win the game, that they completely failed to do, and that is control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. The offense did not control the line of scrimmage. The defense did not control the line of scrimmage. They've got to control the line of scrimmage. They've got to get after it, fire off. Big guys got to roll. That's what they got to do in there on both sides. So if they can control that line of scrimmage, if they're constantly giving the running backs, 2 yards of push, and then they can fall forward for 2 more yards, even if there's no hole. There you go. Then you give them a hole, and you're talking about 7 yards of carry. But if you're getting pushed back a yard, then you're in trouble. So you got to control the line.
What about you, Brian? What do the Steelers need to do this Sunday?
I really want to see James Conner get a lot of carries early and often, start controlling things. Opening up, starting with a run to open up the pass. When we get to the pass, I'd like to see Dante Moncrief shackled before player warmups, and or maybe E3rd or something. That might be illegal, so we can't do that. But yeah. So, or maybe some stickum. Maybe he could go back to the good old days of the '70s and some stickum. But I'd like to see more, and I'm agreeing with the live chat on this. More James Washington to help open up for Juju. I really think he's that dynamic playmaker. I think Deontay Johnson is going to be a dynamic playmaker. So those are the 3 core guys I want to see. Go ahead, mix in a guy like Moncrief, and don't let Switzer lead your team in targets. I mean, sure, he caught him, but his yards were. It was like watching Jerome Bettis late in his career. 3 touchdowns, 1 yard rushing. That's basically he's catching 6 balls, but he has 7 yards receiving. I mean, or something like that. I mean, it was just ridiculous. But on the offensive side of the ball, that's what I think they need to do to control it. And then on the defense, you just have to shadow Russell Wilson. Make sure that he doesn't beat you all over the field with his legs, and be ready for when he throws the ball. Somebody mentioned watch Lockett. I really want them to watch DK Metcalf. He's been overshadowed a little bit since he dropped down to the 2nd round, but I saw him on that touchdown reception the other day, and I thought he looked magnificent. He's the guy you really need to keep an eye on.
Okay, for me, I mean, obviously, Tom put $2 in the tip jar, so I had to put this up there. He says to actually score points in the touchdown zone would be a key for the Steelers. That would be a good key, and it's going to be offensively. I think everything that you guys said is 100% agreeable. I'm not disagreeing at all. I want them to be aggressive. When I watched the Steelers-Patriots game from last week, everything felt really safe. It felt really, really safe. The play calling was safe. Ben's decision-making was safe. And I get it. You don't want to make the costly turnover. But at the same time, you're going to have to be aggressive. You're going to have to try. And Seattle's going to do what New England did. New England kept 7 defenders in the box almost the entire game and was fine with just playing unless they went 5 wide, in which case they changed their sub packages. But they were very aggressive on the line of scrimmage and dared the Steelers to take shots, and they just didn't. And when they did, except for the one to James Washington, they misfired. So I want them to be aggressive. And on defense, the defensive front has to win this matchup, because what did we say last week? This is an offensive line that they can exploit. This is an offensive line that's missing their center. This is an offensive line. They had all these trades. They only had 1 sack, and they barely touched Brady the entire game. So I thought TJ Watt did well, especially because he was double-teamed almost every single play. Bud Dupree did not play well. He did get a sack, and yes, whoop-de-doo. He was stonewalled almost every single pass rush attempt. So for me, those are the 2 things. Be aggressive on offense. And lastly, they have to get after the quarterback with their front. They can't have to rely on the blitz all the time, because Russell Wilson, if you blitz and he escapes the pressure, you are going to get burned down the field in a very, very big way. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Go ahead, Dave.
I want to ask you a question with something that you said, Jeff.
What's that?
When's the last time the Steelers were really aggressive in week 1?
In week 1, in terms of what play calling, and
Yeah,
I'll tell
I
you,
don't.
the
I'm
last time I can
trying
think
to think
of
back.
was the game against the Cleveland Browns when they were up big at halftime.
And then
And
they
then they
weren't
came back.
aggressive.
Yes, they went polar opposites. They went from super aggressive. They're throwing the ball downfield. They're pushing the pace. Le'Veon Bell's breaking off big runs, and then all of a sudden in the second half they just pulled their foot off the gas pedal. And then the Browns came back. They ended up winning the game, but still, Brian, what do you want to say to that?
2016 in Washington on opening Monday Night Football, I thought they really looked dynamic that night.
And I think when you had talk about aggressiveness and play calling and on offensive, look at what the Patriots did. That's week 1 aggressiveness. They threw in a gadget play.
Okay.
Edelman throws it back to James White. To me, that's aggressive. It doesn't always work, but at least you're being aggressive. They're taking their shots on the field. The Steelers' offense is still built around having the deep ball available. And if Moncrief is not that guy, then you need to play James Washington more. Although that Lance and I both agree that we think that the way that they deployed Washington this past week was really, really dumb. You can't have him just running go routes. He's a very versatile wide receiver in terms of, think back to the preseason. All those post routes that he caught, he was those deep in cuts. He can make those plays too. They have to trust him to make those plays, or should I say, Ben Roethlisberger needs to trust him to make those plays. So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves in terms of our preview before we get to Dave's Stat Geek segment. So Dave, you have a Stat Geek for us tonight?
Oh, I always have to find something for Stat Geek. Except the problem is, all my good numbers between my show on Tuesday and just texting Jeff random stuff. I text him all these things. I'm like, wait a second, I got nothing left for Stat Geek.
So these can be just for Brian, because I
These
probably know
might
all
be
the
just
others.
for Brian. Okay. Hey, Brian. I'll ask Brian because this is
Go ahead.
we're going to eventually get to a scenario of, which is kind of fun that Brian likes to do, of that was the game where. Remember where we'll bring up something and we'll be like, oh yeah, that was the game where and some of these things I was looking up, it made me trigger some things in my mind that I want to see if you guys remember the same thing. Hey Brian, what's the record of the NFC West at Heinz Field with Mike Tomlin as the coach?
Holy crap! Okay, so
I'll give you a hint. It's been 6 games. They've played 6 NFC West teams since Mike Tomlin took over at home.
Okay, well, I could tell you right away that I'm probably going to go ahead and say 6-0 on this because I cannot remember it. I lost at home.
And that is winner, chicken dinner there, Brian Anthony Davis. They are 6-0. Okay. Of course, two of those wins came against the Seattle Seahawks. Do you remember both of those games against Seattle? Do you know something significant about both those games?
One was like 31-0. One was a blow off. I mean, you know what? I believe they were the second game of the season or the home opener both times, possibly.
One time they were, and I have that written down here. The time that they were, I'm pretty sure that one was in 2011. Yes, you are correct.
So the one in
and they won that one.
2007.
Yeah, so 2011 they won 24-0, and the one in 2007.
That was week 3, I think, and that would have been like 31-0.
Well, it was 21-0.
21.
But
they were both 21-0.
Well, one was 24-0, one was 21-0.
Oh wow!
So the thing that's crazy is the Seattle Seahawks have never scored a point at Heinz Field.
Wow.
Yeah, when Jeff talked about Brandon, was it Schultz? I can't remember
Schultz,
the last name.
yes,
who came on their show last night. I actually filled in and did one of Brandon's shows with him this week. He was blown away by that stat. He couldn't believe that they've never scored at Heinz Field. So, and I brought that up Tuesday night. But with that, I found that the Steelers are 6 under Mike Tomlin against the NFC West. They are right what you hope a team would be. They win their home games and they split their away games. So they're 6-0 at home and they're 3-3 on the road. Now they've won on the road against the NFC West 3 times. And I was wondering if you guys remembered those games because 2 of them were against the St. Louis Rams.
Yeah.
So they weren't on the West Coast. It was in St. Louis. The first
one of them.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the most recent one was 2015.
The Rams.
And that was
the field got caught on
game.
fire.
Field caught on fire, yeah.
The field caught on fire. Very good. The field caught on fire. The Steelers won 12-6. And what was the other significant thing from that game?
That was when Ben Roethlisberger got hurt and Michael Vick finished the game.
See, you guys remember. So that was the game that Jeff loves this too. So how about the other one? Okay, go ahead.
Really significant about the other one because it was right before Christmas in 2007.
That is correct.
And something really significant happened there, Jeff. Do you know that?
Oh, you're taking my question. But
okay. Well, yeah.
no, go for it.
In 2007, something significant before Christmas happened?
Basically,
it was Thursday night game.
Thursday night game basically ended Willie Parker's career.
He broke his
leg.
Really? I didn't have that from that game. I had something else from that game.
Oh, I know they romped. They just destroyed the Rams that night.
41-24.
But yeah, late in the game too, and it was the typical use of the running backs until their wheels fall off, and he just got destroyed and broke his leg, and that was it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, he came back and played in the Super Bowl year, but he wasn't never the same.
But that game also gave us the first and only touchdown by I'm going to say famous Steeler. He only ever had one career touchdown, and it was the last touchdown of that game.
Only one career touchdown? And he's a famous Steeler.
Famous Steeler. He had one touchdown. Brian's cheating.
No. I'm typing.
I'll give you a hint. The reason he only had one touchdown is because it was a defensive player.
Casey Hampton
scored a defensive touchdown.
Casey Hampton?
Oh no, it was he was legendary. If only he would have had 20 touchdowns if he could catch.
Ike Taylor.
That would be Ike Taylor's only touchdown of his career was in that game against St. Louis.
You know what? I almost wore that jersey tonight too. That
would have been good. But the other win that the Steelers had on the road against the West, that was in Arizona in 2011 as well. But I was looking back at some of the great stats that the Steelers have at home against the NFC West. Not only are they 6-0, the closest game out of all of them was 12 points. They've won by 12 points or more in all 6 games. That closest game was in 2015 against the Arizona Cardinals, where they won 25-13. That was the game that's not me breaking up. That's me.
I'm sorry. That was the game that Landry Jones got them to win, right?
That was the comeback second half win by Landry Jones.
Bryan.
Who came in for an injured
Michael Vick.
Hurt his hamstring.
Michael Vick. Yeah, so Michael Vick started. Yeah, because Vick was still playing because the field caught on fire and Ben got hurt against St. Louis. And Vick was starting, and Landry Jones came in, and the Steelers were losing at halftime. And Landry Jones came in and led them back to a 12-point victory. So it was that game.
That's when Landry Jones wore the flannel and did the "aw shucks" press conference afterwards. "Oh shucks, I'm just glad to be here." He's wearing flannel. I just went like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Well, are you done, David? Is that all your questions?
I mean, I don't really have any other questions. I will say that out of the six games against the NFC West at Heinz Field, 3 were shutouts, 2 against Seattle, and I can't find what the other one is. And if it wants to make anyone feel any better, when the Steelers generally start home and away or away and home. They don't play either the first 2 games on the road or first 2 at home. They split them. And in games where the Steelers go on the road and lose and come back home to Heinz Field under Mike Tomlin, they are 3-0 in those games.
Now, if you remember the 2011 game, I believe that was the same year they opened up the season in M&T Bank Stadium and got their doors blown off.
I have that written here.
And it was extremely embarrassing, and it was a very similar feeling to what the fan base is feeling right now after the Patriots blew the Steelers' doors off. Go ahead, Brian.
What was the record that year, that 2011 team?
Their final record?
Yep.
Do you know? Are you asking?
12-4.
Yeah. So they rebounded, and they rebounded. You brought this up on your show, Brian. The loss to the Eagles where I think, were held to 3 points as well, where Ben was sacked, I don't know how many times, and they come back from these losses a lot of times and have really good seasons. So, did you guys? I don't know, Dave. You probably listened to the show, but I don't know if Brian. Did you listen to the Standard last night and Brian and our interview with Brandon?
I'm not a team player, Jeff.
I know that you'd rather listen to the idiots in Pittsburgh. So, anyways, here is a stat that he said that in the Russell Wilson era, he has only won, I think, one game in the month of September on the road. In the month of September, it's incredible how slow starts they have. Traveling to the East Coast, bad football team. And he said the one win they had was in the 2013 season when they won the Super Bowl. So, not you want to talk about the stats coming at you all over the place that are saying good things for the Steelers. We got them. I'm not sure that I'm buying into all that, but still, it'll be interesting. So, okay. Good stat geek, Dave. I thought that was some good stuff. Let's talk about this upcoming game a little bit closer. Let's talk about some X factors. We're talking about a guy that we think can be offense and or defense, and someone that could actually change the complexion of the game in one way or another. Brian, we'll start with you. Who is your X factor or X factors, plural, for this upcoming Week 2 game?
So this week I'm going to go with Vance Mcdonald. We saw what he being absent last week until the fourth quarter really did. If you go ahead and put him in the game plan and work that angle as well, he's going to be more effective than dink and dunks to Ryan Switzer and drop balls to Dante Moncrief. So I want to see number 89 get out there. Let's see the Vanimal go wild.
Oh, what about you, Dave?
I'm going with what could have been the X factor last week, and that is one Sean Davis coming back and playing and seeing if the problems that the Steelers had on defense, it's going to be tough because no one is New England. So you're not going to get the pure measuring stick from last week to this week. But if he comes back and shores that defense up, I personally thought he might have been the guy that called the plays and would get the green dot that they made a big deal of about this week, that TJ Watt's the one that was calling the plays. I think Sean Davis might have even been that player because he's there that can do it. I think getting him back is going to be a key factor with what he can do if he can shore up that secondary for the Steelers.
I'm going to go generic here. I'm going to go with a player that Brian mentioned earlier, and that is James Conner. And they have to get him going early. I don't think they need to run, but they need to get him in situations where the offensive line feels that they have a play that's working. If you watch the Steelers when they run the ball well, they typically have one or two plays, and it's typically David DeCastro pulling out in front, or if Pouncey's playing, him pulling out in front because they're athletic and they lead the way. And they just keep running those plays until they can stop it. They need to find what that play is early, get James Conner going, and then, see if they can. I still think as Ben Roethlisberger gets older, the reliancy on him needs to back off a little bit. And that's why I would love to see them be more of a run-oriented football team, but that's just not the way that the NFL is trending right now. But I would say James Conner would be my X factor. Now, guys, if there's one player, let's talk about Russell Wilson in particular, because that's who we know the best. If you're the defensive coordinator, you're Keith Butler, and you're figuring out a way to defend against a mobile quarterback, but yet a quarterback that's not like RG3 before he got injured, where he was typically a runner and didn't throw the ball as well. Russell Wilson is a very good thrower of the football. Brian, if you're defending him, how are you coaching this defense up to take care of that job?
Okay, I've already used Ether, so I can't use that anymore. So let's just go ahead with do you shadow the guy?
With him, who would you do? Who would you have spy him?
You know what? I'm going with Barron or Bush.
That's not a bad idea.
I mean, that's I'm thinking of a fast guy in the middle that could go ahead and shadow him, and I mean, you're not going to get the stats out of these guys. We're not looking to get stats. We're looking to get to keep this guy at bay, and I'd love to see speed matching up with speed with one of these guys, especially seeing that we've seen sideline to sideline from Bush in limited time, so maybe that's a good way to go.
What about you, Dave? What do you think?
I like Brian's idea. That maybe spy with someone like a Devin Bush. Your outside guy's got to contain you. Bud Dupree's not going to be able to just run the arc and get taken out of the play, because if that's the case, then Wilson's going to be able to just duck right up under and go. If the outside linebackers are going to rush in that manner that they do, especially Dupree, then you have to spy, because someone's going to have to be there for when he takes off. So the question is, do you want to have one of your inside linebackers doing that job, or do you want to change the way that your outside linebackers rush in order to contain?
I think you definitely have to spy Russell Wilson. I wouldn't be shocked if they would even put someone like Cameron Sutton or Mike Hilton with that job. Someone that is more of a defensive back and less of a linebacker, someone that can keep up with Wilson. It's going to be interesting. He is really he's their straw that stirs the drink. If he's on, they're a dangerous football team. I don't care what they look like last week against the Cincinnati team in Seattle. It's early in the season. This is not going to be an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. Now let's talk about fantasy football. For those that pay attention to our FanDuel League, and I'm talking about us three, 2 of the 3 finished in the top 3 this week. One of us did not. Not going to mention any names, Bryan. Anyways, he's looking around. Dave was victorious. He finished first in the league last week. I finished in second. You better thank your lucky stars that Larry Fitzgerald started catching fire at the end of that game and going to overtime. But still, when you're looking at this game from a daily fantasy football, that's DraftKings, that's FanDuel, whichever service you use, who are some players? I want to know who you want to start, who you want to bench, and who's that one player no one's talking about that you could take a flyer on and save some money. Well, Bryan, you were the loser last week. Let's start with you.
Hey, like Tom Petty said, even the losers get lucky sometime. And I had Lamar Jackson. I was like, yes! And then I just at the last second, I took out Sammy Watkins. I figured, hey, let's put Tyreek Hill in here. Tyreek Hill gets hurt. Sammy Watkins, the rest is misery. But with that being said, Russell Wilson's the guy that I'm looking to start this week against the Steelers. I mean, I really think that in this game he'll put up some magnificent numbers. So
did you just say who you starting
for the Steelers game? Russell Wilson for the Steelers game.
You're starting. Please do. That's all I'm going to say. I hope you do.
Hey, I've seen this movie before.
Wait. No. We're going to jump all over Bryan like you guys want to jump over me. Bryan, you have to send us a screenshot to prove to us that you are playing Russell Wilson in your FanDuel league.
Well, we'll all be
in our league.
We can all take a screenshot.
You said to take him, so you've got to make sure he's in your lineup.
Oh, it comes down to the dollar. It comes down to the dollars. If I like something else, I'll go with something else. But
you're being totally honest.
No. You don't get a chance to backtrack now.
No, it's not backtracking. We're not talking about the whole league.
I get it, but hold on. So you really like him in this matchup?
Oh, yeah.
Do you think he's going to be playing catch-up and has to throw a bunch, or do you think that he's just going to light the Steelers' defense on fire?
You know what? I remember the game just 4 years ago. And they scored about 31 points on the Steelers, and
39, I think
39, and he was going crazy to Doug Baldwin, and
he was retired.
He had an amazing game. I mean, I know Doug Baldwin's not there, yeah, but you have some talent on that team, and Russell is a fantastic talent. So yeah, I would start Russell Wilson this week and have no problem.
Yikes. Okay,
I mean,
Dave.
it doesn't mean I'm going to.
I know. Okay.
Because there's
I'm sorry. I just like
28
that
others.
sometimes when somebody says something crazy, we want to jump all over them and make them
and
go out
that's
and kick
fine.
field goals and things like that. So
Well,
that's why I was trying to say
there's a big difference between I'll start him in my daily fantasy league and saying that you can nail a 55-yard field goal. There's a huge difference. So go ahead, Dave. Who would
but
you
that's
start?
why I wasn't going to back off with that reply. Who would I start? I think Bryan already hit it. I'd start Vance McDonald.
I thought you were going to say Russell Wilson. I was going to make that show's over. We're done.
I meant earlier on with what he was saying. I say let's start Vance McDonald. There's no way the Steelers are going to wait until inside of 2 minutes left in the game before they target him again. Now I know part of that was the Patriots specifically were trying to take him away. They did a good job with their matchup there. But I think Vance is going to need to come out and the Steelers are going to need to establish something with the tight end, with the middle of the field, and I think Vance could be a good play.
I think you're right, Dave. I think that after watching the Seahawks let Andy Dalton have a career year against them in Seattle last week, I'm taking number 7. Ben Roethlisberger at home is not Ben Roethlisberger on the road. He didn't play well last week. If you follow this team closely, he typically bounces back. I'm going to put number 7 as my quarterback. I can take as many screenshots as you want. I'll probably have number 7 as my quarterback because when he's at home, he's pretty much a safe bet to get you a couple touches. And so I think that he will be looking at Vance McDonald. Okay, so let's talk about who you're going to bench. Bryan. I'm sure you're benching Ben Roethlisberger or half the Steelers at this point. So
no, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I'm just looking at it from. we do Steelers every week, and we're open to the other team, and so I'm like going against the grain.
You don't have to get sensitive about it. We're just messing around.
No, I'm not defensive. I'm actually feeling good about this, and I've got a fantasy role. I don't care if I lose in fantasy, and as long as the Steelers win. So I'm not going to root for one of my guys that I put in against the Steelers. I'm just like going what I think. It's like playing the stock market, boys. So here's the thing. So if we're going to go ahead and bench somebody this week, I'm thinking that, I know I'm not allowed to go ahead and say Ryan Swear. I know you're not going to go ahead and let me do that. I'm actually going to bench James Washington this week. And the reason being is, as much as I think that they should go to him, I still don't think they're going to. I just don't think that they're putting the stock in him that we are. So, I mean, that's just my opinion. But I really don't think that. So if I have to, I think they're going to have a great week all the way around. But I'm looking at James Washington to just not get the targets.
How about you, Dave?
I'm benching Dante Moncrief out of principle.
I agree with that.
Because I don't want them to throw him the ball. Because, give him. Why is it that when somebody is struggling, the Steelers seem like they go out of their way to throw the ball to him? I seem to remember after, someone else with mangled hands. What do they do? What do they do? Like the first play in the playoffs, they try to go deep to him. Things like that they want to go out of their way to throw it to the guy that might be struggling. You know what? When you do that, you're leaving yourself in second. If you do that on first down, you're leaving yourself with 2nd and 10. Yeah. And do you really want to do that? Do you really want to take one play like that and do that? I still think they'll look to get him the ball, but I don't think he should have anywhere close to 10 targets like he did the last game. And like I said, he had 7 yards on 10 targets. I mean, 0.7 yards a target. No. You know what? Come out, ball out this week, and then I'll put you back in my lineup. You're benched out of principle.
Last week, the Steelers tried a 2-back system, and they played a lot of Jalen Samuels, and it just didn't work. And so for me, that tells me that if you know the predictability of the Steelers, they're going to ride James Conner this week, I think, a lot, meaning they're not going to play Jalen Samuels as much. I would say don't play Jalen Samuels in this matchup. You could start James Conner, but I wouldn't play Jalen Samuels. I think the only way he sees time is in spot duty or gadget plays or things like that, or if something were to happen to Conner. So I would say stay away from Samuels, okay? Let's see here. let's take a break from fantasy football, and I've told Dave I would do this. Brian, what did you want to say?
Can I just make a comment real quick? I mean, everybody's doing the Washington over Moncrief. That was a fantasy football segment, and that's not. That was just a comment. What I think is going to happen, but I agree that Washington is the guy, and that's who I want to see. I said that at the beginning of the show.
Yes, he did. So check the tape. All right. So last Friday after this show, we went to a local field, and Dave, I give him credit. Kudos to Dave for putting up, right? Put up or shut up is what they always say. And he showed up, and we put a tee in the ground, and he taped off 45 yards, and he missed all three. And then he tried a fourth. It was unofficial, but he missed that one too. I do have to say, though, we've lost connection, and I was going to end the show anyways. Like, the connection ended when we were ending the show no matter what. And it was the kick heard around the world. And I do have to say that we then walked up 10 yards to a 35-yarder, and Dave nailed it.
It was gorgeous.
It was a beautiful
straight
kick
down the middle. And I was so proud of him. In fact, I wanted to see him. I didn't want to mock him. I wanted to see him drill one. But when he moved up to 35, he just cracked it.
It was money in the bank. Is in a golf terms dead nuts right in the middle. And so for that, I had to give Dave props because he said, "You better tell everyone on the show that I made that 35-yarder." He made the 35-yarder. So big props to Dave for putting up with our shenanigans. Big props to Bryan for wearing really, really tight pants in his Mike Mitchell jersey.
Hey, I have no problem making a fool out of myself. So, I had karaoke at my wedding, for goodness sake. So.
Well, here's the fun. Like Kevin writes, let's see Jeff try a 45-yarder. Jeff's not saying he can kick a 45-yarder. Jeff knows that he can't kick a 45-yarder. Dave did that because he said he could make a 55-yard field goal. I'm not saying that. I know that I can't make it. If you guys just want me to make a fool out of myself, I can kick off a tee. That's fine. But I'm not going to make it. So.
Oop. Sorry.
So with that said, I think it's time, before we answer some questions to end the show, to get to our prediction segment. Now, I gave my prediction last night on the standard as a standard. I will say what that is again, but I'm curious what you guys think. Dave, for the degenerate gamblers out there, has the line changed from yesterday or earlier in the week? And if so, what are the numbers?
It changed from the initial spread when an article came out with that on Tuesday. But if you're following along if you haven't had a chance to, you guys should go check it out on the site. The I almost said BTCS again. The BTSC bookie articles, and what it is it's kind of like an informative piece on a piece of betting. Here as we go, and then I pick 10 games, and people vote, and we're betting fake money on these games, and then we're going to see what we can do. And of course, last week everyone picked the Steelers, because I'm like, you might not want to pick your team, but therefore we lost that one. But we won the other two that we got. So, well, granted, that was the one that had the most money. So therefore we were down $25 for the week, but at least we came through with the other ones. But in that article, this was what we had outlined, and that was that the Steelers are 4-point favorites at home. Although the majority of the betting has been on Seattle, 56% to 44%. And the current over-under is 47 points.
So what was the spread again?
4.
Oh, it went up. Okay.
The Steelers are favored by 4.
All right, Brian, what are your thoughts on the game, the prediction?
I think the Steelers are going to win. I really think they avenge that loss. Let's go ahead and give them a score of, we're going to go 29-21 with the Steelers victory. And now this is the part of the show where Jeff talks about the crazy number that I just threw out. But if we can go back to last week when I picked 33 for the Patriots, I think I was correct. And that has not been brought up. So I just want to bring that up. 33. I was wrong on the 29 for the Steelers, but 33. So book that 29, my friends. It's gonna happen.
I wanted to tell you why I say this stuff, because my father, who is on all sorts of boards all season, he's on a lot of 29 boards. And it's
I
basically
used
where
to do that.
you get a team, and if that team hits 29, you win the money. And
Exactly
then,
29.
yeah, it has to be 29. So when I see numbers like 29, it's just such an odd number. And I always think of my dad, someone's hitting that at his bar that he always goes to. So, okay, Dave, what do you think about this game?
Yeah, I've done 29 leagues before, and
I've never heard
they're
of one.
oh yeah. I mean, we did it where you were assigned the same. We had 16 people. You had
We
two
have,
teams, one from
okay,
AFC, NFC, and they were your teams all season. And if nobody wins, it rolls over week to week, and it
yeah.
stacks up pretty cool.
That's
I
awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. It really is. And we just did $1 per team per week, so it was $2 a week. So it's pretty cool. Oh, what am I doing? I'm predicting the game, right?
Yes.
Okay. I do think the Steelers bounce back and they come out with a better performance. I think on both sides of the ball that they do, and I'm going to go this week. I'm going to go Steelers 27-20. So they're going to cover, and unfortunately, I think that puts me right on the over/under, doesn't it? Because I said it was 47. Okay, I'll change it to 28-20. So then that way I'll say I'll take the over.
Well, the early line was 46.5.
Okay, well that would be
So if you
perfect.
went with that, then yeah, you'd be fine. I said last night, I think the Steelers do rebound. I think they win this football game. I predicted the score of 27-17, that they win by 10. I think it is going to be close in the first half, but I think in the second half, the Steelers kind of get their act together and come out and actually put up some points. So I like the Steelers. They're not going to hit. I don't think they're going to hit that 30-point plateau, but at the same time, they're going to come close, 27-17. So right now, if you want to throw out your prediction in the live chat, feel free. That would be awesome. Dave, do you have the information on our Survivor League? Because there's a lot of people that listen to the show, that watch the show on YouTube, that are in our Survivor Leagues. I know you put out an article updating that. Do you have that information handy?
I have that information exactly in front of me right now.
All right, go ahead and
So
update what that league is. I'm still in it. Bryan, are you? Did you win?
Barely. I took the Seahawks last week, and barely.
I took the Ravens to beat Miami, and obviously it was a big winner. I watched the first play and was like, "Yep, won my game." And we know Dave picked New England.
yeah, which is funny because I got someone that just ripped apart on my show Tuesday saying you're cheering against your team. How could you ever do that? I'm like, I'm not cheering against my team because I picked the other team in Survivor. I'm not even trying to win this league. I'm in this league to see someone else win this football. I'm just in there to have a good time. I was hoping I would lose and we get knocked out. But Bryan took the pick that was the majority of the choices of across all 6 leagues, and that was the Seahawks. They were chosen. I think they were picked 155 times. They were the most common um, selection in all 6 leagues. It was then followed by Philadelphia. It wasn't the same in all 6, but they had the next most at 101, and then Baltimore had 91. The most common incorrect choice, which is something I definitely want to bring up here, is people that didn't go in time to make their selection. So for those of you in this league, make sure you go in now. You obviously can't pick the Thursday night game. It used to be that these leagues were set up, you had to do it by Thursday night, then everyone would get knocked out because they'd forget by Thursday. I didn't set my fantasy lineup because I forgot about there's a game on tonight. But make sure you get that by 1:00 on Sunday because you don't want to get knocked out because you just didn't make your choice. The other choices that a lot of people made where they got knocked out was the Browns, who then got it handed to them, the Jets, and unfortunately, a lot of people had taken the Lions. Wow, although they did not lose, in order to move on, they have to win.
People took the
So
Jets to beat the Bills.
yes, there was
Oh
one
my
league
gosh.
where there was because I went through with each one and broke down how many people eliminated stuff. There was a lot more people that got correct answers that aren't even listed here because I was surprised at how many people moved on in week 1 because week 1 usually just crushes people in a survival league. But in this one, they did pretty well. But it was looking pretty grim for a while when Seattle was down to going into the fourth quarter. When they were down to the Bengals at home, and Philadelphia was down 17-0 in the first half. So
I
it looked
was
like tons of people were going to get knocked out. But unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, fortunately for those of you that picked it, they didn't. So out of the 592 entries, now remember, I have 5 extra of those. So really it's with 587 people. But out of the 592 entries, 485 are still alive. We lost 107 people this past week. So we're moving on, but you can't pick the teams that you picked this past week. Sorry, Jeff, you can't pick the Ravens over the Cardinals this week. Shucks. And unfortunately I can't pick New England over Miami, which I have a feeling that's going to be a very popular pick.
Yeah, but the only problem with that.
No, I'm not touching that game with the 12-foot pole.
Well, I'm saying I'll take Miami with the points, man. They're giving 9.
But we're not picking
19.
The spread, are we? Are we?
We don't do the spread.
I was going to say, did I miss
so
the spread?
It's just straight up. I mean,
Here's
if Miami
reason.
keeps this single digits, the victory, that's like a win for them. Go ahead, Brian.
Here's the reason you don't pick a team like New England this week. Even though that's an easy win, then they're gone. You lose them. So then if you're still around in week 8 or week 9, you're picking a tough matchup that might be a pick 'em game, and you're really losing out there. So I'd like to save Pittsburgh for the Miami game. I would like to do something like that. I'm picking a team like Cleveland over the Jets this week because Darnold's out, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm not going to need Cleveland later. So. Hey, if you already make your pick, can you go back and change your pick?
Well, and that's the thing. You can change your pick up until 1 o'clock every Sunday. Do you want a good strategy to make sure you're not using up the teams that you think are going to be better down the road? You could make picks for all 17 weeks. You could go in right now and make all your picks. Now you might want to change them at some point, but then that way wait a second, I don't want to use Baltimore this week. I want to use them when they play. Well, wait a second. They already played Miami. Now they're playing Arizona. Do they play any other more cake teams than that? Probably not. Or you realize this is your best chance to use them because they're not going to have easier games. So that's something that you can do. But this has been a lot of fun so far. You've got to check it on Tuesday. Every week we will have an update as an article on the site where I just compile all the games so that way you can see what's going on in the other leagues since you only have access to your own.
And Dave, how did you and I do in our picks from last week? Have you compiled?
I have that right here. Yeah, I already have that calculated. It's funny. How do you generally want to do? You want to when you pick games, a lot of times you finish around 500. Well, you and I both kind of finished around 500. I got you against the spread. I was 8-7 while you were 7-8. But you did much better with the over-unders, especially against me. I was 7-8 with the over-under. You were 9-6 with the over-unders.
Took a ton of unders in week 1.
Yeah, and there was a lot more overs than I thought there would be.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. So, okay, we have a time. We have about 3 minutes or so for some questions. So if you have some questions in the live chat, fire away. We'll answer as many as we can. Before we get started, I hear there's a shootout going on right now between the Panthers and Buccaneers. I'm not watching that currently. A lot of people
scored a touchdown.
What is the score?
It is 10-6.
Oh, that's a shootout. All right. A lot of people picking the Steelers to win. Someone said 29. An overtime game. Wow. 22-21 Steelers. Someone picked Seattle. Someone said they just don't like their chances. It's going to be interesting to see.
Can I bring up a question that was brought up a long time ago, so I can't actually bring it up on the screen? That I'm pretty sure it was Darren Dalton said that about, do we go the whole show without mentioning the Rosie Nick situation of him being out, and what are the Steelers going to do?
Yeah.
You know what the Steelers are going to do? They're not going to play a fullback because they didn't do it this past week anyway.
That's one of the reasons why I think, when they lost to our skipper, which Bryan, I feel like Bryan, let me ask, are you okay? Because I was literally going to send put a phone call out, have someone come by your house to make sure you were still okay, because Deontay Johnson is starting for Denver and Tuzar Skipper's now a member of the Giants. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Spencer.
What's that?
Deontay Spencer.
Deontay Johnson.
I was going to say, that would really be
Dave wishes it was Deontay Johnson. He hates that guy. But anyways, anyways, yeah, you guys, your Steeler hangover is just turning into like memoriams of these players. It's
Well,
So
that's true. I mean, it was very fresh at the time.
it
I
was
mean,
very fresh.
it was so fresh, and at least I'm not the guy. And I saw this on Twitter. The guy that his Tuzar skipper jersey arrived, and he was posing in his 51 Steelers skipper
I
jersey.
saw that.
And I'm like, oh gosh, I was like, oh gosh, I gotta put away my Hodge jersey. Hodge's
So,
jersey.
well, I think when they lost Skipper via the waiver wire, and they signed, what's his name, Dave? You wrote that article, right?
J-Rone Elliott.
He's a special teams guy, and so I think that they'll be fine in terms of special teams. That's where Rosie Nix excelled. As for fullback, everyone says, who's going to play fullback? Who cares? They don't use a fullback. Carl says, why won't they play a fullback?
That's a simple question. That's the point.
They run out of the shotgun so much.
Shotgun.
Hey, maybe Sutton Smith's coming back, baby.
That just goes to show you what they really thought of Sutton Smith. When they had a spot on the practice squad or on the 53, and they still called J-Rone Elliott instead of Sutton Smith.
Yeah, and so since we don't have a lot of questions, I'll ask the last question here. Guys, what were your thoughts on Joshua Dobbs being shipped to Jacksonville for a 5th-round draft pick? Brian, were you happy, sad, indifferent, didn't care?
Well, I was hoping to get a pack of Lucky Strikes out of him, and I don't even smoke just a couple of weeks ago. So, a 5th-round pick is amazing. I loved this guy as a person. I thought he was a fantastic guy for the community of Pittsburgh. But what we're looking at here is he really did have that much of a future with the way Mason Rudolph played in the preseason. So getting a 5th-round pick that's a big win.
Dave?
That is a big win. I mean, apparently people were asking about Dobbs before week 1, but I think a lot of the trades, the Steelers didn't have to give up anything else. I thought maybe they'd get a 6th while giving up a 7th, that famous move, or get a 5th by giving up a 6th or something like that. They just flat up got a 5th-round pick for him. I know some people are like, but you used the 4th on him. You know what? You used him. He developed for a year. He was your backup for a year, and you turn around and just get one less round value for him. A guy that was not going to suit up all season if things go right, then that's great. Would have been nice to have him run in practice this week as pretending to be Russell Wilson. But that's secondary. Well, that's good. Get the 5th-round pick. And I do think it's pretty interesting to note that this has never happened in the Mike Tomlin era, and it only happened at the very beginning of the Kevin Colbert era, where the Steelers only have 2 quarterbacks on the roster with the 3rd one on the practice squad.
That's interesting. Like I said, I asked Lance what he thought of the trade last night, and he goes, "Oh, a 5th-round pick, whatever. It doesn't mean anything." No, that means a lot, in my opinion, based on the fact that it's arrows that you have that you can use. You could say you want to make a trade. Here's a 2nd round and a 5th, and that 5th round's the one that you acquired via trade. It's the same when they traded Gerald Hawkins before the season started. It's a player who's going to get cut. Joshua Dobbs is going to be in street clothes all year. You just got a 5th-round pick for him, so good trade. I thought it was really good. As for the Steelers running 2 quarterbacks, if Ben goes down and Mason Rudolph goes down in the same game, the Steelers are screwed anyways. So.
And they're not dressed. You're never going to dress them for the game.
Exactly.
The biggest reason they keep 3 is so no one else can sign them away. But when this was the case, when they made the decision that they were bringing back Elliott, who, as someone said in the live chat, yes, he led the AAF in sacks, is because he's no longer practice squad eligible because he's already played 3 seasons. So therefore, if they were bringing back Elliott and Hodges, they couldn't put Elliott on the practice squad. So you had to put Elliott on the 53, Hodges on the practice squad. I'm content with that, and let's see what happens.
We'll see what happens. All right, guys, good show. I thought it was really tight. Let's hope for the best. Fingers crossed regards to the Steelers playing Sunday. That's a 1 p.m. kickoff Eastern Standard Time at Heinz Field, and we'll see how everything goes, and hopefully you'll be talking with Lance and myself in the post-game show somewhere around 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, talking about the Steelers' first win of the regular season. But otherwise, we will see you next week for another episode of the Steelers Preview. And as Lance always says, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you.